Okay, hi everyone. First of all, sorry for eating your break time, but I'll try to cover it as early as possible. The current topic is about CloudStack authentication methods. It might sound a bit obvious about this topic because any cloud environment or a web portal should have some sort of authentication to be enabled, right? But from if I have to see from admin or operator point of view, it's good to know what all authentication methods are available in particular to CloudStack, so that they can decide how it fits their use case. Even from user point of view also, it's good to know how they can manage their own logins and how securely they can manage it. Okay, a pretty quick info. I am Hari Krishna, working as software engineer at ShapeBlue. I am Apache CloudStack committer, and recently I have got PMC membership. Glad for that. I like this phrase for myself, born and brought up in CloudStack. Starting from my career, I have been into Accelerate and Citrix and now ShapeBlue, but it's all CloudStack, and I'm still enjoying it. That's my family. I used to have a lot of hobbies, but now it's all the kit, typical single kit things. Okay, going to the actual topic. So within CloudStack, we have these existing authentication methods, local passwords, the usual username passwords thing, and the LDAP, which is lightweight directory access protocol. Yes. And the other one is single sign-on or SAML, and the new addition is the OAuth 2. On top of these existing authentication methods, we do have two-factor authentication as an extra layer of security that works with all of these combinations. I'll go through one of these each of these methods that will cover the session. I didn't keep an agenda slide, but that's about it. Basically, this is the agenda. I'm going to cover all these authentication methods. So starting with the local authentication, it's a pretty obvious one. Every cloud environment will have it using username, password. This is the only one comes by default with CloudStack. All other authentication methods have to be enabled optionally. So here in this case, we save the password in the database, of course encrypted, but the only downside of it is it can be hacked a bit. Like if say within a single CloudStack environment, if I have multiple accounts, I can replace the password within the database itself. Like I'll copy the other encrypted password itself to his account, my password to his account, so that I can get access to that. That's a bit downside of it, but this comes by default. Other things can be enabled and we can make it secure.
Sorry, because the audience might not know the ins and outs of the authentication. It's only if they have access to the database server.
Yes.
And they have access to the key. Because you encrypt the.
Doesn't have to be, right. If we have the encrypted password, if I can copy and paste it on.
May not be the default password all the time.
No, but okay, we can debate on that, but I got your point too. So this is how you might have already seen in the previous presentations, the usual username and password thing. Coming to the next one, LDAP authentication. If I have to make it pretty simply, say suppose if I have a directory of contacts somewhere on a server, and if I have to import into my phone and I have to use it. Similar thing with accounts. I'll have an LDAP server having a couple of accounts, and I can import into CloudStack and use them. As I said, this won't come by default. We have to enable it. That can be configurable at global setting or at per domain level. The three different ways of configuration is the normal manual import or auto import. Like when we provide the LDAP details, it will automatically import everything. and even auto sync. If there are any changes at the directory level, it should sync with CloudStack. So these are all the configurations that we can make it in CloudStack. We can choose accordingly. So the next comes with the single sign-on. So given a SAML server externally available, what we can do is having a user will ask SAML server to authenticate that user on behalf of CloudStack, and will let that user access CloudStack with it. Again, this has to be enabled. Basically, this all comes with as a plugin framework, so we have to enable that. So since I am saying this has to be an external API call, CloudStack uses the username as the key to identify that user. Basically, what your SAML is providing is the user authentication and also user identity management. We have tested with these providers, and this is all working fine as far as I know. And with respect to configuration, this takes some effort, but definitely it works. See, in the same login page I have shown you before, the portal login, next to that we have a single sign-on. So once we click on login here, it will redirect to that external page, and we have to provide the username and password there to get it authenticated. See, these are all pretty well documented in CloudStack, so I am not going through all of them. If at all I have to, that will be a different session itself. So I am going through each of these one by one. So next comes the auth to authentication. This is the recent addition we have in 4.19 release that happened recently. I would say this is pretty easy to configure, just because I have developed this. But yeah, if I have to compare with other methods, this is pretty easy to configure. Currently, CloudStack supports Google and GitHub as the providers. Actually, I forgot to introduce this. We might have already seen this, right, on different web portals, like where it asks for signing in or signing up using some social web server like Facebook, Gmail, and Twitters. Similarly, we can use it in CloudStack, but only thing is we use it only for signing in. We don't sign up using those social accounts, because that's not how CloudStack admins manages users. Users has to be created first in CloudStack, and then we'll use these OAuth to authentication to get it authenticated. It's only for signing in. So unlike SAML, where we use username as the identifier, right? Here we use the email address, because that's what we use to log in into those social. So yeah, once it is enabled and we configure those providers, in the login page we see these two extra buttons here. And since this is a plugin model, we can easily develop other providers and make it available here itself. Currently, CloudStack supports GitHub and Google. Even we can have something that universal things like Keycloak and other providers, which manages all the other social logins. We can do that as well currently, but it's not available by default. We have to first implement that plugin and add it to CloudStack. But that should be pretty simple, like we have the plugin framework and we have the docs how to develop that. I'll go a bit in details of this OAuth 2 configuration, just because the other methods are already available since years, and this is the recent addition, and I know a bit details about it, so I'll go through a bit details of it. So as I said, this is disabled by default. Once we enable that, under configuration sections, we have this OAuth configuration subsection where we can add providers. This is a one-time operation admin or operator has to do, so that so before doing this OAuth configuration, one has to go to either Google or GitHub and configure the provider over there. I mean, configure my cloud over there. Say suppose I am the cloud provider, I'll go to my GitHub or Google account, and I'll configure my cloud over there. After configuring there, it gives the client ID and secret, which we have to give it as an input in CloudStack. That's it. Those are the two steps. We have to configure it first on the Google or GitHub and use those details and import it into CloudStack. This is one-time operation which will be done by admin or operator. Once it is there, as I said, these two buttons will be shown for all the users. As I mentioned earlier, this has to be, we use email address to identify the user. So, and as I also said, we use it only for sign-in, right? So, once the user is created in CloudStack, that user has to have that email address updated with it. So, if I want to use my Gmail account, in my cloud user account, I used to have the Gmail configured in my per my user account. Once that is done, I can use my Google account to authenticate for CloudStack. So, even after configuring this OAuth 2, we can still use the other authenticators like passwords and all. That's an extra thing that we have. The redirect URL, this is a bit into cloud configuration detail. We might not need it now, but what this is like, since we are configuring on the Google or GitHub, we have to tell it after authenticating to which URL we have to redirect back. This is the URL. So, basically this is my CloudStack URL, after which authentication is performed. It will redirect to this and it will let into CloudStack. This is all the usual process of how OAuth is developed in most of the cloud providers. We follow the same thing. So, as I said, given all these authentication methods, on top of it we can also have an extra layer of security, which is two-factor authentication, which I think we all know about it. On top of existing authentication method, we'll have an extra what do I say, a code generated which will have to use it. So, yeah, this I have already mentioned why 2FA is required and all. So, coming to the configurations, as again this is enabled and this is disabled by default, we have to enable it. That's optional, it's not mandatory, but once it is enabled, I get an option to mandate it. After I configure the two-factor authentications at global settings or domain level settings, after I enable that, I choose to make it mandatory. Once I make it mandatory, all the users under the domain, or if it is a zone level setting, all the users have to set up the two-factor authentication. So, that is like insisting all the users to make their accounts secure. Continuing on the configuration, we have these two types that we support. One is time-based OTP and the static PIN. Time-based OTP is the typical one that we use it with the Google or any other authenticators. So, we have tested with Google and Microsoft, but it should work for all the authenticators available because it is the same protocol that uses. Static PIN, when we actually choose static PIN for 2FA, it generates a static code. To be frank, it is not a real 2FA, but we have made it as an example thing that everyone can use. It is like a second password, nothing else on that. Yeah, as I said, this is available both at global level, at domain level. I can configure it at domain level. I think most of all the authentication methods can be configurable at global and domain level. I do not have to mention it for each mechanism. And again, this issuer is again a bit deep dive into the configuration details. We can mention the issuer name in the CloudStack. Like once I use my phone or something to configure the two-factor authentication, Actually, I can't take the screenshots of the authenticator, that's why I didn't keep it. Once it, if I use it, enable 2FA on the GitHub, it shows the issuer as GitHub. The same thing is configurable in CloudStack. If I want to mention my cloud, say suppose it's a eCloud, my cloud name is eCloud, I can give that name under the issuer in CloudStack, which will be shown on the authenticator application, Google or Microsoft or anything. If we have time, I can show you some demo. So I have already configured, I can't show single sign-on for some reason. I couldn't make it work with some test SAML which are already available, but this is how it looks. So I'll go in the same sequence. The first one we talked about is the usual username and password, which gets into CloudStack. The next one we talked about is the LDAP. So we have got this LDAP configuration section here, where we'll have to import, configure LDAP accordingly. And there are a bunch of global settings that are available in LDAP for LDAP. And as I said, these are all well documented, so I'm not going through each and everything, but this is how it looks. So once this is configured, if I go to this account section, and if I click on add LDAP account, basically it fetches all the accounts which are there on the directory, so that I can click on say suppose Albert, and I can choose which domain it has to be imported into CloudStack, and what role he can possess, and if I can add it. It adds here, and I can sign out and use these accounts in CloudStack. So this is how this import works. The next one comes is the SAML. As I said, I couldn't make it work, but this is how it looks like. So the next to this usual login tab, we have this single sign-on. If I click on this, it will redirect to the actual SAML server, but currently it is unavailable, because that's a test SAML thing I was working on. If we have a proper SAML server that is there, then it would have redirected to that, and we should authenticate there. And what else if I forgot? Yeah, the next one is the OAuth 2. So before logging in here, let me show you the configuration that I have done. So under the configuration section next to LDAP itself, we have OAuth. So I have already configured it here, but if I try to do it, we will just have to select the existing providers, Google and GitHub. If we can add an extra plugin that can show up here, add a description. So these are the three details that I was talking about. Once the let me try to log in into GitHub. I'll just show how to create an do you see developer settings anywhere?
Scroll down, yeah, on the left bottom left, scroll up. It's got other way, scroll up.
Okay. Okay, so this is what I am talking about. If Kiran is the operator, he'll have to, thankfully Kiran has few already configured. If I have to add a new OAuth app for my cloud, I'll have to provide a basic example name, and the home page URL will be my CloudStack's URL, management server URL, and some sort of description and the callback URL. So, this is the callback URL I was talking about. Again, this has to be so the redirect URL looks like this. So, the management server IP address or and followed by verify OAuth. So, this will, after authentication, GitHub will redirect to that URL. Similar thing is, I mean, the configuration looks for other providers also, like Google and everything, but for example, I am showing it here. So, once this is done, say suppose Kiran has already created it here. So, once this OAuth is configured here, we will get a client ID and the client secret. So, these are the two details that we have to get it from the GitHub or Google providers. Once we get that, so we will have to fill it here, the client ID and the secret key. We will have to use the same redirect URI here. So, this is the only configuration operator has to do. Once these are added like this, we will get this option here to use the OAuth flow. So, I will try to use GitHub. Kiran, do you mind if I log out? Because it is trying to log in with your I am sure I have forgotten my password. Okay. Can I get my phone? Because 2FA is enabled at GitHub level, this is nothing to do with CloudStack. So, here when I try to sign in with GitHub, since I have already logged in there, it has redirected directly, otherwise it would have asked for the credentials over there. Actually, I would have done that GitHub login during this process, but yeah, I think you got the thing what I am talking about. So, that is the OAuth 2. I think I have covered all the authentication methods. So, now I will go to the two-factor authentication. So, I am going to the admin's account. This can be any user actually. So, here we have this new button to set up the two-factor authentication. Here we will have to, I have enabled it, but I haven't restarted the management server. I think that will take time. Oh, I think it was just slow at the time. So, here we are listing Google and other TOP authenticators, just because Google is the widely used one, otherwise any authenticator will, TOTP authenticator will work. So, after I select this, if I do setup, this will show a QR code which I have to use my phone authenticator to actually scan this QR code and get it added into my authenticator application. So, I will have to verify this first 090496. I think this is enabled. If I log out and if I log in here, let me use GitHub itself. As I said, 2FA works, it works with any type of authentication mechanism. So, let me try signing with GitHub. It hasn't enabled.
You need to enable in your account.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got you. Then let me do with admin with username and password. Thanks, Rohit. So yes, so this is an extra page that we get since 2FA is enabled for this account for user. So I am trying to give this time based OTP here. And when I click verify, it does it calculation, it allows the user. Yeah, that's it, nothing else. Any questions? Yes, please.
Shall we keep this, do we have to keep this management server in public to use that URL? It works if we use the private IP for this management server.
I don't think it is required because all we need is the, you're talking about OAuth authentication, right? No, it is not required. Only reason because it has to be accessible to the GitHub. That's anyway we'll get it with the internet.
Yours is a private management server, right?
Sorry?
Yours is a private management server.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the best example. This is a local one. So we that don't have to be a public one. Yes. See, all for the provider point of view, all it needs is the session details and the redirect URL, because after it got authenticated, it just has to fire that URL. Since it is on my browser, it comes here. Nothing else over there. Any more questions or feedback?
The static pin, you said, is now stored in the DB.
It stores in the DB. That's why I said it's not a perfect two-factor authentication. Yes, yes. I started doing it as an example, but it went in a different direction. Otherwise, it would have been a user input. Like instead of generating a static pin, if it would have been a user input, it would be a bit fit into 2FA.
One more question. So this two-factor authentication, if I enable, how do we use it with API? It's a good question. How do you use it with an API?
For two-factor authentication, right? Okay, okay. So
Because we just saw a page with the
yes, yes. See, all we are doing here is see, this is an extra API that we are using. If this API is not verified, the next APIs will fail. Like even that session will get logged out. So you're talking about the automation point of view, right? Yeah. Once those usual username, password are used, we have to use a API called verify two-factor authentication API or something. That has to be the second API. If that is not verified, then the next APIs won't work. So if we have to fit it in your automation, then the second API should be verify two-factor authentication API.
In case of automation, it would be better to use API keys.
That could be a feature request in CMK because that's not supported now, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Usually we separate user accounts from the automation accounts.
Can I utilize two authentication methods at a time?
At a time, as in, I didn't get your question.
Authentication.
I don't think so.
I can take that.
Yes, please.
So one can use a external authentication system like Keycloak. The Keycloak is a software Bird has. There are many more like Keycloak, which has a lot of things. You know, a lot of enterprises have YubiKeys, a lot of have multi-factor authentication, like multiple steps you need to go through. So an example is we have some users in the community who use Keycloak as an LDAP and SAML provider. So in order to integrate with CloudStack, you use SAML. When you try to log in, it redirects to Keycloak where you have plethora of configuration options.
Thanks, Roy.
What are the methods you told? Can't configure two methods at a time.
Okay.
For example, can I utilize O authentication and two-factor authentication?
So I'll give you an example of multi-factor some of the most secure systems are biometric enabled. So they'll have a hardware key, like a UV key, FIDO compliant UV key that you put in. But in order to use that hardware key, you still need biometric authentication on the UV key, or the FIDO compliant hardware key. So the hardware key stores your private key, RSA keys, or some kind of cryptographic keys. At the same time, those keys are guarded by the fingerprint. So that's multi-factor. Your fingerprint unlocks those keys in the hardware, that then unlocks some code in that thing.
Maybe to answer that question, if we can use multiple authentication for the same account with respect to CloudStack, here itself, if we can see, I can use the usual username and password and GitHub for my account. If I have created an account on my name Hare Krishna, I can combine these two. Is that what your question actually?
No, added multiple layers along with this.
No, then I think Rohit has answered that properly. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, guys.